You're listening to Tehachapi with Key Budge, Corey Costelloe, and Greg Garrett.
It is time for Tehachapi, or as Key Budge would say, Tehachapi time. But Key Budge is out on vacation, well-deserved, and probably critiquing this show as we speak. So welcome to Tehachapi. Corey Costelloe, Greg Garrett, and we also have Hamed Jones joining us, our finance director, on today's program. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing good, Corey.
Very good.
Thanks for joining us today, because we're going to be talking specifically. We have done these shows in the past, sort of recap council meetings, and we had a city council meeting last night as we're recording this podcast. And the big story, the big item on the council agenda was what is being referred to as the Local Control and Essential Services Measure. About a year ago, we started a sort of journey with a consultant, with the council's blessing, because we saw a lot of looming challenges out on the horizon, whether it was the rising costs of Kern County Fire Contract Service, which we've talked about before, whether it was state actions that were causing us to spend a lot of your general fund money on other things and more than we normally have. And so we really were working with the public in the last year to talk about their priorities and their funding priorities and what that sort of looks like. So we were able to find out in this journey we talked about in the meeting last night that the public has a big appetite for local control here in the city of Tehachapi. And what that came out with at the end of all these consultants and surveys and phone calls and community presentations was a 1 cent sales tax measure, or 1% sales tax measure, which went to the council last night. And so step number one this is something that will be voted on by the voters. So step number one last night was to have the council hear from the public and decide whether or not to place it on the ballot. So we all had a hand in the staff report last night. Greg, I know you did a lot of the heavy lifting with presenting this to council and also letting them hear from the community about what they thought. So I kind of feel, and I'll get your guys' opinion, but I felt like the sentiment in the room echoed exactly what we saw in our surveys and our feedback from the community. There was a huge desire to sort of buck the Sacramento trend and establish some local control in Tehachapi.
And so it's the first time we've had a packed house at a city council meeting, and every single person in the room to the T was in support of this measure. Yeah. We must get ourselves out from the thumb of Sacramento, right? They are just pushing harder and harder and harder on local municipalities, including Tehachapi. You know, they've taken millions of dollars out of our coffers, whether we like it or not. They'll raid our coffers. They're redistributing money. It's getting harder and harder to do our business locally with Sacramento's interference, and with this proposed 1 cent sales tax initiative. Then we could realize that 100% entire, without state and county interference, that money comes to our coffers, to the general fund of the city of Tehachapi, and the people of the city of Tehachapi can manage that money, manage those resources, and figure out and decide where they want that money to go to locally, because we know better than Sacramento.
Yeah, and Hamed, it was brought up a few times yesterday, either in the staff report by Greg, I think you mentioned it as well. Mayor Smith mentioned it too. The city's done a very good job financial planning. We are planners in so many different departments, as Greg points out. There are reserves in the bank, right? We have reserves, kind of our savings account. Those are emergency funds. Those are things to try to sometimes do larger public projects in the future. But so we've been financially secure. We had a balanced budget passed recently, but a deficit budget the 4 years after that. So what does this mean for? First of all, I kind of want your take on the reserves, and then what would a 1% sales tax increase mean financially for the city of Tehachapi, and in turn the residents that would benefit from those funds?
Yeah, so I think really, a good point to make too is and it really shows the pros of doing a 5-year budget. So when you go back to our budget process, most agencies maybe just do, an annual budget, and they look at that 1 year. And in our case, if we looked at just 1 year, we've got a surplus this year. And you're not really looking ahead and seeing some of the looming challenges. And so when we do go out 5 years, we were able to see the cost increases and see our fiscal condition going out. And so yes, we have a surplus first year, and then we've got growing deficits, the 4 years afterwards. And in the fifth year, we're at over a $2 million deficit. So yes, we've got reserves now, about 13 million. But then the reserves start going down and down. And then so after the fifth year, yeah, we still have a little bit of reserves, but you keep that pace going and you're going to quickly run out of reserves. So you look at ways, okay, how can we increase revenue? And so sales tax is our number one revenue source. It's we estimate about $4 million annually right now. That makes up 1/3 of our revenue budget to the general fund. So that's really one that you can really make an impact if you can, do a sales tax measure and increase that revenue. So, doing a 1 cent add-on, that would essentially double our sales tax revenue, bring in another $4 million.
Right. Well, like we've mentioned many times, we're planners. And in this case, we're talking about fiscal planning. And if you're not healthy fiscally, you can't plan for the future in any manner, right? We don't design and sell widgets. We provide a service, whether it's public safety, streets and roads, water, wastewater, those sorts of things. And the state is there's rhetoric in Sacramento about limiting or eliminating the ability for cities to pass their own sales tax initiatives. So right now the time is ripe for this. If the voters don't approve it this November, we may not have this opportunity in the future, meaning Sacramento will not allow local municipalities to even consider this sort of thing. It's all going to be controlled by Sacramento. They're even looking at eliminating the VLF funding mechanism, which is vehicle licensing, which is your DMV tags. The city of Tehachapi receives about $1.6 million annually in your DMV tags. Now, there's a conversation about, is it too high, tags?
It's a little high.
Oh my goodness.
In this state, it's a little high.
It's crazy high. But the fact of the matter is, if you eliminate it, then $1.6 million goes out of our general fund budget. General fund pays for airport subsidies, fire, police, potholes, all of the businesses support that we've offered over the years, throughout COVID, on and on and on. So we need those funds to be able to continue to provide the high level of service that we have been accustomed to and the quality of life that we desire and appreciate in our community.
And the timing is never right necessarily. But, we started, as I mentioned before, we started this journey last year. And there was a initial survey done in August of 2021. It's available on our website. And it was done by a consultant who called a bunch of likely voters and asked them some of their priorities for funding and even sort of gauged their appetite then for a potential 1 cent sales tax increase. At the time, it was 64% said were leaning in that yes category. They did something similar. And so a lot has happened, though, since August of 2021 when it comes to inflation, federal actions, federal inaction, energy policies, foreign wars, you name that, inflation's gone up, record level inflation. So we got very worried with that because, but I think if we look at it, then the latest poll came out that said 63%. So it basically stayed steady that there was support amongst likely voters in the city. But I think when you look at that, it almost made the case for itself about local control, because what happened in the last 10 months has been a lot of federal action and inaction in the economy and what the Fed is doing, what they're not doing. Again, we had nothing to do with that here in Tehachapi. And so this was almost making the case, and I almost feel like some people really saw other actions coming in and felt like, well, if we need to do this and pay this 1% to have more locally controlled funding, then so be it. And I want to add additional things too when we talk about the sales tax piece. And I've had conversations with other cities that have done something similar, and it is kind of the norm now. I mean, Lancaster, Palmdale's 10.25%, Bakersfield's 8.25%, 7.25% is what we have now. That's the state minimum, and most of that goes to the state. We get about a 1% back. But you look at that, and the local control piece of that is huge, and so that's really what the voters have seen now is they want to see that, to be able to have that local control. But more importantly is that 1% also goes to the online sales. So now if you live in the city of Tehachapi, you buy something on Amazon, for example, your money, that sales tax that you pay on your Amazon checkout, it actually goes to the county, and the county sort of whacks it up based on population, and we get every city in Kern gets a piece of that based on our population, not necessarily because of the size of the purchase or that sort of thing. This would actually be, and since it is an overlay, we would get that full 1%. So you'd still get a little bit of money, would go to the county and get split back. But that 1% piece on all online sales is actually huge, because that's the shifting reality of retail anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's definitely value there. I mean, there would still be a little bit of that pooling portion on the first 1%, but that extra 1% add-on all comes to the city, and it's retained there. Vehicle sales, at dealers, I think that's another important aspect of this, is where, we don't have necessarily the new car dealers here, but, people are going to Palmdale, Lancaster, or Bakersfield. And so now that district add-on, that full 1% on a sale of a vehicle comes directly to Tehachapi as well.
I bought my last vehicle in Lancaster, and the sales lady said, wow, you don't live here, so you don't get to pay our fine tax rate of the 10.25%.
Right.
Because, I mean, even if it were approved and go to 8.25, it's still 2% less. And when you purchase a vehicle, that's a lot of money. And she kind of chuckled about that, because, I was from Tehachapi and didn't live in Lancaster.
We have, at the city of Tehachapi, we have been, holding the course steady. And so not that we're doing more with less, but certainly we're doing more with the same.
Yeah.
Our neighbors around us, Wasco, Arvin, Taft, California City, Ridgecrest, Bakersfield, they've all increased their rates over the years to 8.25 all the way up to 10.5. And so kudos to them, because they continue to, they're providing that service too. But we've been holding steady for the longest time. And also I want to point out, the county of Kern is looking to do the same thing, the 1% going from 7.25 to 8.25. They're going to ask the voters of the unincorporated areas. So what we're talking about here is a city initiative. And so I want to make it clear that the listener doesn't assume that it's 1% upon 1%. Mm-hmm. If the county passes, great. That's just unincorporated areas. Golden Hills,
Bear Valley,
Alpines, Diane. At the city, it's just the city. So we have political boundaries. So we're not talking about 1% upon 1%. We're talking about a simple 1%.
Yeah, which would mean some synergy between. So if they both were to pass, that means you'd pay the same sales tax rate when you're shopping at Walmart in the city as if you went out and had dinner at P-Dubs or Old Town Pizza. You'd pay that same rate there. So there would be no difference between the two. And then, of course, the money would be allocated for the county in a different way. But the city voters will not see the county's measure on their ballot, and the city and the county voters will not see the city measures on their ballot as well. So, we talk about that too. And this was brought up through some of our education. We looked into it, and we talk a lot about using AI sort of tracking data, visit data, to find out what our business is, what our trade area is, what our traffic flow is like in local businesses. And we found through looking at that, you look at Walmart, for example, Home Depot, some of the larger retailers and tailors, and they sort of tell the story of the trade area. 80% of their customers, and basically 80% of our sales tax generated in the city is paid for by folks that live outside the community.
So I think you need to say that again, because if the city resident passes this initiative, their 1 cent is going to translate into 5 cents.
Yeah, it's 4 times your investment.
It's 4 times your investment.
Yeah, 80% of the sales tax.
You cannot overlook the importance of that.
In the city of Tehachapi is paid by people that either live in a nearby surrounding community, live in Golden Hills, live in Bear Valley, and shop here locally, eat here locally.
Mojave.
Or they're passing through and they're driving from Fresno to Las Vegas. They're driving Highway 58. They stop at Pilot. They stop at Love's. They make a deposit. They purchase fuel. They get some Wendy's, and then they hit the road again. That money, because we're located on a very busy commercial corridor. That money comes in too. So the beauty is, first of all, this also helps them sort of pay for the services that they consume while they're here. They're on the roads. They're using water. Sometimes they need police service, which is all fine. It helps pay for that a little bit. But a lot of that money will go back to benefit the local community and the residents. To Greg's point, it's 4 times your investment. And so we're in a unique situation. We've had consultants tell us that the city of Tehachapi punches above their weight when it comes to population and sales tax generation, because we have so many visitors that come into the community. So that's an important point to point out to folks is 80% of that is paid by those that don't live inside the incorporated city limits.
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night and trying to think of an analogy, and I kind of thought of it almost like a grant or a matching grant. It's almost like the city resident, for every dollar that they will put in or pay, as almost like a matching grant, they're going to generate another $4 from outside residents.
That's a good point.
To
That's
go
a
towards their
super
service.
good point. We have touted for years. We're very successful at obtaining grants. One of the reasons, we have great people that are writing the grants, and we have a need, of course. But if you don't have the matching component, aka money in your general fund, you get $1 million grant for the airport, you have to provide $100,000 as a matching component. If our reserves or our budget is not healthy enough, we don't have the money to match. And so that grant is lost to our community. So there's a slow degradation of your infrastructure. And man, we don't want to be there.
No. So we had a lot of conversations at the council meeting on Monday evening, and we had a lot of folks actually speak up. And again, the council was just putting this on the ballot. You have to adopt the ordinance or approve the ordinance to say, let's put this in front of the voters and let the voters decide in November of 2022. So we had some folks that attended, and they actually spoke in favor of putting this measure on the ballot. And we're going to play some of the clips from Kim Nixon, who is a member of the Planning Commission. She serves on the Tehachapi Police Foundation. And of course, public safety is a very important part of the priorities the residents told us when it came back to local control. Josh Pierce, who is the president of the Greater Tehachapi Economic Development Council, speaking on behalf of the board. And also Nathaniel Harbison, who is the owner-operator of now Castle Oak Homes. He's also a city resident, and he came to the podium to speak. So let's hear from them real quick.
I am here tonight to speak in favor of putting this measure on the ballot. We moved to Tehachapi in 1986. We relocated a business up here and moved all of our employees up here because this was the community where we wanted to raise our family and relocate our business to. I've served on the Planning Commission for more years than I want to count, with 2 different times, thanks to the City Council. And I served on the City Council for 5 years. And while I was on the City Council, I saw the work that was done on the budgeting. I want to commend the city and all of the department heads and the councils for all the work that they do to bring a balanced budget every year. Our police department, our fire department, our roads, our 911, we have invested a lot of money as a city in all of this, and I would hate to see any cuts come to it over a 1% increase. The fact that 1% will come completely to the city is huge. And it sounds like after the presentation that if we don't do it now, we may not have the opportunity to do it again in the future. I know that the city will do a lot should you choose to put it on the ballot to promote it, but I would like to encourage every one of the council members. You have a responsibility to the people who voted you into these seats to go to your district to educate the voters. The vote is going to be important. It's midterm elections, and we know that the voter turnout is not huge during midterms normally, but I think the residents, if they understand, will support this completely. We're all struggling financially with COVID and inflation and everything that's going on. But I think that we can all reach a little deeper in our pockets to keep Tehachapi the community that we love and that we want to live in and raise our families in. And we see that every day with people moving into this community because of that. Working at the visitor center, I see people coming in and talking about how wonderful the downtown area is, how beautiful this community is, how much pride we take in the place that we live. And I think that 1% will continue to show that pride and not have any department cuts. So with that, I would encourage you to vote to put this on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm here to speak in favor of allowing the voters to go ahead and vote on this ballot. It's a very important initiative. Public safety and public infrastructure are increasingly important as we look at economic vitality. We look at other communities where they haven't focused on public safety and that public infrastructure, and we're seeing large chain restaurants, other businesses, and corporations that are closing and shuttering, and then it's also hurting the economic vitality of that community because they don't have these large employers that are there. And the reason they don't is because public safety has suffered, so now people don't feel safe coming to work. People don't feel safe coming into these restaurants and shops to buy and have commerce, which will greatly affect the community as a whole. So on behalf of the board of the Greater Tehachapi Economic Development Council and as the president, we ask the city council to approve this tonight and to let the voters make that decision and have a really informed decision and conversation with the community. Thank you for your time.
Nathaniel Harbison, owner-operator of Costelloe Homes. I'm a project manager and a real estate agent. And I've had the honor of representing a lot of people who've moved to this area to get out of crime-ridden places. So part of my fiduciary responsibility is not only to get them into a viable home, but continue that protection down the line. So we're 100% backing this, continue to protect our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So all three of those very supportive of the law enforcement aspect. I think Nathaniel's comment said, I have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility as a real estate agent to put people in a home, but also after that I want to put them in a home in which they feel safe. So there's a lot of support for law enforcement, even fire protection in those comments from the public, and especially on the business investment. You make a business investment, to Josh's point, you want to make sure that investment is protected because we're seeing businesses flee Seattle. They're fleeing Los Angeles. Starbucks just announced they're closing 3 stores. They're building Starbucks in Tehachapi. They're closing Starbucks in Los Angeles. Can you believe that? Because they can't deal with the lawlessness in some of their locations in Los Angeles. And that's a pretty telling point to how important.
And I tell you, once you
is.
lose the public safety aspect, it's impossible to get your community back.
Yeah.
I mean, look at some of the communities around us that struggle with this, and turn on the 5 o'clock news. It's undoing that is you're going to spend so much time and money, and I'm not sure you can ever regain.
Well, and you're also
what you've
limited.
lost.
You're limited anymore. I mean, you look at the analogy, right? This isn't Tombstone where it's lawless and you can bring in Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp and they crack some skulls and throw some people in jail and then all of a sudden they clean the town up. It doesn't work like that anymore. The police are limited in their powers.
Extremely limited.
It's easier to maintain as what we're trying to do than if you lose it. Getting it back in today's policing public safety environment is probably impossible to do so. I just don't see how it's possible. So those were kind of the points on the side of kind of more of the business and public safety. But we had some council member comments as well, and I wanted to play those. I want to start with Councilmember Christina Scribner, who really delivered an eloquent sort of speech about, it's going to cost. This is going to cost either way. It's going to cost either in putting this measure on the ballot and letting the voters decide the 1%, or it's going to cost us if we don't do it. We're going to keep paying Sacramento contract costs with the county, whatever it may be, and that cost is going to be a reduction in service. So we'll hear from her, and then we'll hear from Mayor Pro Tem Michael Davies.
Comments from the council? Christina?
Thank you, Mayor Smith. And thank you to everyone who had comments today and their support for this 1 cent sales tax to present for the voters' consideration. The council's sacred duty and highest priority in my mind is to respond to the taxpayers' need for public safety and infrastructure. At its bare bones, that is what we rely on government for. And our city does not have dozens and dozens of departments that do lots of work and lots of different types of services to provide to taxpayers. It is the very basic essential services that we deliver that the community counts on us for. And I think that a very strong case has been made tonight that we have done our due diligence and we have found efficiencies within our budget. We have shared our budget in a transparent fashion to the voters to scrutinize and consider what their opinion is on it. And we have gotten to a point now where we are one of the lowest in the state at the minimum of what we can charge in our tax. And we have spent a lot of time finding out how deeply we can cut our own budget. I think it's really important that we understand we are going to pay a cost here, period. The cost will be 1 cent sales tax that will be shouldered to the degree of 80%. Thank you to our finance director for pointing out that what we are doing is cultivating, continuing to maintain the beautiful community that we have cultivated to this point. And we are allowing those who come to enjoy our community to help share in the responsibility to keep it safe. They're coming here to shop. They're coming here to stay. They're coming here to work. And their investment in our community is helping to sustain our lifestyle, our way of life. This is not a pretentious community that has a overly sophisticated expectation. This is a community that is full of wonderful, wholesome families that want to raise their children in a safe and clean and healthy environment. And that is what we are after. And that is going to be compromised. There will be a cost, whether it is through the 1 cent sales tax or whether it is through cuts that I believe will deter our commitment to the community to be able to deliver the essential services that they're counting on the city government to provide. I don't want to belabor the points that have been brought up today, but I think it is important to really understand the context of this question that we're posing to voters. I believe we are asking for a very modest increase that will stay 100% with our local, demonstrably conservative and transparent government entity providing essential services. I think that is something that we can reasonably understand and digest is critically important. And if that were not enough, the fact that this is perhaps our last opportunity to do what we are committed to doing and providing basic services. Because once again, the state of California and their infinite wisdom has decided that perhaps we should not have local control. And that's a theme that I think many of us are concerned about. So I would like to just urge us to consider bringing this forward for a vote of the people to decide what kind of government they would like to have.
Thank you, Christina. Michael?
I agree with Christina 100% wholeheartedly and everything that's been said by our speakers tonight. When I got involved with City Council, and one of the things that was brought to my mind is budgets. That's what you're going to be responsible for. That's going to be your #1 priority as a city councilman is budgets. Spending your money as well as mine and my wife's. Let's make sure we get that clear. But this has been, I have been studying this and looking at everything, and I go to Lancaster, I go to Palmdale, I go to these other communities and I see I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be in those situations, or I'd move there. I don't want to live there. I want to live here. Being in law enforcement myself as a volunteer, I see it. I see the wear and tear on our officers. I see our officers in our town, in our communities. We need to support them. We need to support our neighbors. We have a beautiful town, and I don't want to see that go down. I mean, we have to, a penny, 1 cent is a far shame for what could happen if we don't approve this. So as a city councilman and a mayor pro tem, I am all for it. And I'm going to be talking through November. I'm going to be talking to my neighbors and my friends and telling them about this, so that we need to be proactive and tell our neighbors and friends. So in November, when it comes to voting, that we will have a say in what happens to our communities. I don't want Sacramento. They can't even take care of their stuff up there. Why? I don't want them here. If it was up to me, I'd move Tehachapi out of here. But unfortunately, I can't do that. But we have to be proactive in everything that we do, and we have to be the leader of the mountain. We've got to be what people look up to in our area. I hear so many positive things about people from people when they come to our communities. You go to shopping, you go to parks, and everybody wants to move up here. That's great. I just think we have such a gem up here on the mountain, and we just need to keep control.
Thank you.
So great points by both of them. Christina Scrivener points out this could be our last opportunity to exercise local control. Michael Davies pointing out that I don't want to live in Lancaster and Palmdale. I want to live here. And if I could, I'd move Tehachapi out of California to stop dealing with Sacramento. So great points by both council members, and I think they really sort of hit it out of the park.
Well, we have a great town, and let's keep it great. If we don't all get engaged, and I would encourage people, we're going to have some information on our website, but if you want to chat with me about this initiative, pick up the phone or call me. Let me know. I'll come to you. We have coffee with the mayor, third Thursday of every month. We have city council meetings, email. Just make sure that you're informed and the decision that you make, because everyone that lives in this city is planning for the future of this city. Whether it's the future of their family, their business, where they work, where they live, where they play. Everyone is playing a part in the planning aspect of this city.
And Mayor Phil Smith was kind of tie this up with a bow a little bit before the council made the vote, but he wanted to sort of point out some of the history of, because the city's, as we pointed out earlier in the show, done a good job building reserves. Greg, you pointed out this is one of your top priorities when you took over as city manager, was build those reserves. Been able to do that. We've been responsible in the way we borrowed money from ourselves sometimes to build things like the Tehachapi Police Department. And you'll hear from Mayor Smith talking about actually used to work. I think Phil Smith worked in every building in this town at one point. He grew up here from a little lad, and he's lived under the railroad,
the
water
institutional
tower.
Knowledge is amazing.
He worked at the police department when it was Spencer's Garment Factory. I mean, that was a great pull from him. So let's hear from Mayor Smith and his comments.
Alone in your thoughts that people want to be safe here. This is a safe community. We have one of the lowest crime rates in the state, at least in Kern County. Very low crime rate. And that hasn't happened by accident. You mentioned this building, this police department. The city has funded major projects like our sewer treatment plant, things like that. We would take loans from ourselves versus at times we've had bond measures, but for the most part, for this building here, we borrowed from another account and paid ourselves back versus paying a bank for a loan. So we've been very good at our finances for keeping our dollars in-house, using our own money, using our own checking account to pay our bills. And by doing that, we've been able to survive the ups and downs with COVID and other things. When the economy tanked in 2008, we stayed above it all. But it's because of good, sound financial practices. But you reach a point and you're squeezed everybody so tight, every department is running very tight, you can tip it over in just a year or two. Hamed mentioned that we have healthy reserves, but over a 5-year period, when the fire department is going to charge us 200% more over a period of time in 5 years, instead of being just a little over $1 million, it's going to be over $4 million. 2.2, in addition to what we already have in our taxes to put on there. So that's a huge increase. That would just wipe out our savings. That would wipe out our reserves. Now what do you do? And we may not in the future be able to do something like this. So this is the time to do it. But I remember this building here, we couldn't have done it unless we had those reserves and we did it in-house. I worked in this building when I was growing up. I took care of after it was a garment factory. Yes. All right? It employed many, many people. It was called Spencer, California. But we were able to acquire the building and repurpose it instead of spending and borrowing on the open market from a bank, $8 million or whatever it was going to cost. We did it for a fraction of that, repurposing this building and making it what it is today. And I think we did a pretty good job. But so the thing is, we're in sound position now, but that could change in a heartbeat, just with certain financial constraints put on us from Sacramento that are out of our control. The fire country contract is not negotiable. I've been to meetings, and this is what it is. That's why Taft had to go to an emergency session and pass their sales tax, just to stay afloat. We would prefer not to just stay afloat. We want to always be, in a position where our savings are intact. If we have an emergency, it's there for us. And this money is for keeping what we have. We're not going to go build a brand new city hall. Maybe in the future, if people wanted to do that and they got behind it. That's not what this is about. This is about the items that were listed, our public safety being the top priority. So, and we're asking a penny. A 1 cent sales tax brings us to 8.25%, which is still below many cities around us.
So Mayor Smith points out we're in sound position now, but it could change. And he gets to the fire department piece, and we've talked about that, but he says, it's non-negotiable. It is what it is. And those numbers, by the way, we sent these out to a lot of residents via our mailers, our informational mailers. We were asking for their feedback. The fire department total contract cost is going up 200% from current rates by the end of the 6-year contract. But there also means an impact to the general fund, which is 6,000%. The general fund right now is subsidizing that contract by about $18,000 a year, along with the property tax that the city residents are paying to the fire department. That general fund payment increases 6,000% into the contract. That's a big jump above and beyond today's current rate out of the general fund, or I should say last year's current rate out of the general fund. That's a $4.2 million hit to the general fund over the next 6 years. That money is just not out there right now in our planning without really going deep in our reserves. So I think Mayor Smith sort of touched on both and summed it up very nicely.
Well, we're not the federal government. We can't print money. We're not the state government where we can go take money from municipalities. A couple of years ago, Corey, with Prop 1A, the state government, they were broke and in a horrible budget issue, and they actually came to cities, including the city of Tehachapi, and they took money from us. So they did not give us our property tax revenue, and they paid that back after 3 years. And that's just criminal. Mm-hmm. These people cannot figure out their own budgets and their own way through this process, but we can. And they're raiding our coffers. And we need to remain healthy. We're healthy now. We need to remain healthy. It's so imperative.
Yeah. And we there was a slide last night, and this will be available online, but it pointed out to the council and to the public, because it was a information sort of presentation. This is what a yes vote means, whether the council had voted yes to put it on the ballot or no. And then this is what a no vote means, whether if the council said no, we're not putting on the ballot, or the council, as they did, voted yes. And if the residents vote no, what would be cut? And so part of that was our priorities. The priorities that we got from our residents said, first and foremost, 2 surveys, local control. Second of all, maintaining fire protection and preventing crime. So fire and police. And number 3, and the one that actually got sort of the most 1s and 2s combined, was maintaining local 911 dispatch. We have the only local dispatch center in the city. The county of Kern operates out of Bakersfield. The CHP, if you're on the highway sometimes out of the city, you call 911, you get sent to the local dispatch center in Bishop. And so sometimes they're dispatching. Sometimes calls get routed there. So we're the only one on the mountain and so our women and men that work in the dispatch center they're local. They're right here on C Street. So, and that's not, it's not easy. We're one of the few, PSAP groups of that size in the state. And it's very important people realize that, especially when seconds matter. So that was one that was
when you call 911, something's up.
Yeah,
you need help right now, and you don't want somebody in Metro Bakersfield or Bishop necessarily trying to figure out where's Curry Street, where's Mill Street,
right,
and directing people. It's imperative that we continue on the process that we started years ago, and we continue to protect our citizens.
So that's kind of what the yes part meant. And then also, the ability to fund road projects. SB1 is the gas tax fund that was sold to voters in 2017 by the state that said, hey, we'll tax your gas. It'll go up every year, but don't worry, you're going to get all that money back on your local roads. How much you want to bet that we got that money back? We get it back in a very limited quantity.
And we can only spend it on certain streets and roads, which was not part of the deal.
No.
And then Sacramento said, let's go build a little train in the Bay Area, and let's put in a 4-lane super freeway somewhere in the Northern Valley and this and that. And we're getting pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
It's again, criminal.
Yeah. So we can't fix your street on Bamboo Court necessarily. We can't with SB1. There's not enough traffic. But it matters. You want your street to not be full of potholes. You want it to get resurfaced. And we had a good program in place. Every road is, we have a bunch of engineers that work around here, and every road condition matrix, every road is listed in our public works director's office. He's got every road, every condition of them. And each year, as funding's available, they get moved up the list, and we knock a few off that list. And a couple years ago, we had a good local funding plan. We were taking about $350,000 a year to local road maintenance. And then with all these challenges this year, we had to cut that piece back. So some of the road maintenance got cut out of this year's budget, and we can't continue to have that happen. So that is those road projects will be funded.
Well, you talk about cuts. If this doesn't pass, there will be cuts.
Yeah, this is what the no vote
there
means.
Absolutely will be cuts to public safety, to streets and road maintenance across the board. The city will not and cannot spend money it does not have. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't find a funding mechanism that is locally controlled, then cuts will be made. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, and that was a great, just to kind of wrap this thing up, it was a great, I thought the meeting, everybody's comments and the sentiment of local control it resonated throughout that meeting, and that's what the people wanted it to hear, and they wanted to be able to have the opportunity to vote on the measure, which is what they received with the unanimous support by the city council last night. So there's going to be plenty more education in the next few months. It's not our place to say vote yes or no, but it's going to be an opportunity to provide all that information, especially the stuff that was presented last night. I'd encourage folks to go to our YouTube page. You can watch the city council meeting. We heard a lot of the comments on the podcast today, but you can watch the council meeting if you would like. It's on our YouTube page at City of Tehachapi, and there'll be some more resources available. But as to Greg's point, come to coffee with the mayor, call, email at any point, and myself, Greg, Hamed on the financial side would be happy to chat with you.
I want and I need people to be informed.
Yeah.
Educate yourself.
Yep. And we're certainly, okay with educating on the impact of this. And Hamed, you've probably had interaction with other city leaders, and I certainly have, that have gone down a similar route. And they've really been able to do, I think Bakersfield's a great example. City of Bakersfield with Measure N, they passed in 2018. They've done a very good job sort of not only keeping those funds local, which is what they're supposed to do, but also delivering and building their police department. They're building, their roads improvements. Sometimes they have a lot of parks. We're not running the parks business, but they are, and they do a lot of projects and improve those facilities. So you've probably seen other cities that have benefited from these sort of measures.
Yeah, absolutely. Palmdale, Lancaster, they're, like you said, up over 10%. And, there were measures along the way when I worked for the city of Palmdale for 14 years. And so, a key part of this is, you want to be transparent. You want to have the credibility. So to make sure, people are informed, that we're showing our budgets, we're showing our numbers, we're showing how the money, will be spent. And that's really important.
Yeah. And the money is going to be spent towards those things that the public came back and said, this is what's important to us. It's not going to be ring the dinner bell for every special interest to somebody. Okay, I want you to do this for my group. That's not what this is for.
No, there will be no underwater basket weaving program.
Yeah.
No. This is about essential services.
Yeah.
This is about maintaining what we have, whether it's public safety or infrastructure. We need to maintain what we have so that we can continue to be a great town.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I could speak to that, and kind of echoing what Mr. Davies said about, not wanting to live in Palmdale, Lancaster. And so, I grew up in Palmdale, Lancaster, and I worked for City of Palmdale for 14 years. And when my wife and I were looking, to buy a house, saving up money, we were looking in that area, and then we just saw a sign, that showed model homes in Tehachapi. And we thought, well, let's just go look at model homes. And when we came up here, we just fell in love with this city. I mean, we saw people, families, walking, with strollers and kids riding bikes. And you didn't see that in Palmdale, Lancaster anymore. There was you didn't feel safe there to be able to do that. And so when we saw that, it was really eye-opening to us. And then, at first it was like, okay, well, there's a commute. But, then I came up another day. I think I went fishing, made a day of it. I came into town and just walked around downtown and just hearing the music play and the nice weather and just how everything was beautiful and well-maintained. And that was the clincher. And it was worth it for me to commute, for the first part of my career at Palmdale. And we've loved living here ever since. We live in town. We want to stay in town, and I want to retire here. And so it really is important to me as a resident that we maintain these services and keep this town beautiful.
Well, Hamed, you talk about quality of life, and we've been talking a lot about public safety and infrastructure. But if we talk about the quality of life in our downtown and such, the depot, the BK Theater, the museum, the music downtown, all the businesses, those things take money also.
The maintenance.
We have an amazing partnerships with these nonprofits, but we do subsidize, right? Water, sewer, trash, investing some money from time to time. We maintain the park space, the railroad park, all of those things, landscape lighting districts. So we're not just talking about police and fire. We're talking about the whole package. And, if we don't have money to assist the depot in their museum from time to time, or the museum, the BK Theater, on and on, the Senior Citizen Center, we are part of their success. We write checks. Our Public Works goes and maintains their facilities. If we don't have the personnel to do that, then those things are going to take a hit also.
Yeah, I mean, little things, you brought it up. I mean, just recently, there was that caboose by the depot that's right next to Conan's. It's been in downtown since the beginning of time. It's been there forever, and it was possibly going to get sold away and be moved out of downtown. And that's kind of been a Tehachapi mainstay, and it's, was dedicated to our centennial. And so we were able to go in and purchase that on behalf of the depot, work with them to get it purchased so they can eventually move that to their property. So it will stay in downtown forever. Those little moves like that will be things that would have to go away because the funding wouldn't be there.
And all the festivals, the Mountain Festival, the Apple Festival, fill in the blanks. Our police officers, our Public Works, when TVRPD has a 5K run, that doesn't happen just automatically. That takes people, which takes money to get those done. So the partnerships that we enjoy, they do take resources from the city, and we're happy to do it. We're happy to do it. It's part of our success story, that's for sure.
All right. Well, folks, if you have any questions, you can always email us, media@tehachapicityhall.com. Go to our website, liveuptehachapi.com. We will have a lot of information about this measure here shortly, and then everybody's email contact information is there as well. So we want to continue to educate and really thank everybody for their support. And the folks, I think really the sentiment at the meeting was pretty telling on the desire to maintain what we have and keep local control here in Tehachapi. So as always, again, email is media@tehachapicityhall.com. Show idea, feedback. We appreciate hearing it. And we'll catch you again soon on another episode of Tehachapod.
Tehachapod is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@tehachapicityhall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of Tehachapod.